Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another really cool and fun episode. It's probably especially cool because I am not on this episode. We have Kelly Caldwell joining Kim and Drew for a really fun interview. It's a Float Conference special guest interview. And Kelly not only owns her own float center, but it actually has 6 different modalities. And she's a distributor for float spa pods. So there's a lot to talk about. I would love listening to this. It's a really fascinating episode. It took a lot of turns that I didn't anticipate. So enjoy this fun episode. And before we get started, Helmbot gets a big shout out in this episode. And you'll get to learn some cool stuff about Helmbot. One of the things they talk about is the responsiveness that Helmbot has. If you have a question, they are so fast to respond to you. It is better than any customer service I think I've ever experienced. I'm not in this episode because I have an ear infection, and I still cannot get an appointment to go in. I think I'm going to go into the emergency department and get some antibiotics because their customer service that I'm going through, not so fantastic. Helmbot, extremely responsive. You have any questions about how to do something or you want some improvements, they can let you know about any of those things very quickly through the Helmbot UI. Pretty nice. Helmbot.com is where you want to go to check them out. Get a tour, make sure it's a good fit for you. It's fantastic. Also, shout out to Isopod. Love my Isopod float tanks. I'm working more and more shifts recently. I'm not 100% sure. I should look into why that is. But I really enjoy opening the shop. I love checking out everything, making sure everything's going well under the hood and the filters and everything like that. And they're just big float tanks. Almost every single time somebody sees one of these tanks, they talk about how much more spacious it is than they anticipated, and it's so much friendlier than they anticipated. But what I love, what they don't know and what they don't need to know is that these things are built like a rock. They're insane, all stainless steel components, beefy tanks that don't break down. And they also have responsive customer service just in case something eventually does die out, which happens on any float tank. But man, these things are built well. i-sopod.com is where you want to go to check them out. And tell them Art of the Float sent you. I'm going to go to the ER and you guys enjoy this episode.
Welcome back to another episode of Art of the Float, where float centers thrive. My name is Drew. I own New Hampshire Float in Londonderry, New Hampshire. And I am involved in the float world in a bunch of different ways to include I own a float center. I am on the board of directors for the Float Tank Association. I do a little bit of consulting, and I am also a member of this wonderful Art of the Float podcast, which also, don't forget, Patreon members, has video and photography, and we even recently launched a store with some really cool products that you can check out.
And I'm Kim Hannon. I co-own Tsukino Float Center in Salt Cave in southern Indiana with my husband, Graham. And like Drew, it wasn't enough to wear just one float center owner hat. I had to add on a couple more. So I also own Mindful Solutions that help support float center owners with things like marketing and training resources. I'm the current president of Float Conference, our nonprofit, and FloatCon's coming up in August. So get your tickets. We just launched virtual tickets. Let's see what else. Art of the Float. This is another big piece of how I'm involved in the industry. And then I have another one that's coming up. So hopefully I'll be adding on a 5th hat at some point soon, because you can never have too many things to do in the float world. We also have a special guest tonight who wears a lot of float hats too. So tonight, Kelly Caldwell is joining us. So Kelly, how many hats do you wear, and tell us about those?
Hey, thank you for having me. I wear a few. So I own my own float center in Greenville, South Carolina called Drift Float and Spa. And I have recently launched Drift Pods and Services, where we are the authorized U.S. distributor for Float Spa out of Budapest, Hungary. So we carry, we handle all the sales for pods and rooms from Float Spa, as well as keep all the stock and parts that any Float Spa owners would need, because things happen and you might need a filter immediately. So I'm the person that gets you that. And then I do a host of consulting within that business as well.
I love it. So it seems to be one of those things that like float center people can't do just one, or you do just one and you realize like how intense it can be to do that one, because, just one is really like 17 different things that you're doing as an owner, and, owner, operator, like you're an accountant, a marketer, you're doing everything. But I think we tend to attract like people who do a lot. So.
Yeah. Well, and when you love it and it's your passion, you can't help but put all your focus there. So as your business gets easier to manage, then, you start another one.
Exactly. Oh, Drew, I think we've lost your audio.
You're muted, Drew. I can't hear you.
Jack, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Kelly, I have just float tanks, and I recently added a Pandora Star and have a light, but you said you are, float and spa. What other services do you offer? Because obviously that's another added twist. I basically have to know about floating and a little bit about a light, but you have to be an expert in a bunch of things. So what else do you have that you offer at your spa?
So we have 6 services. We have our infrared sauna, from Sunlighten, so it's a 3-in-1, so near, mid, and far infrared. And then we have 3 float pods at the moment, looking to expand here shortly into a space next to us and pretty much double the amount of services we have. So, but currently I have a Lucia light, so similar to the Pandora Star, and then an oxygen bar, massage, with a whole host of different kinds of massage. And I just recently added a mental health therapist who works out of our space with a very unique technique called CRM. It's the complete resource model, and it's trauma healing focused, which is really kind of the basis of why Drift started, is that healing trauma. But of course, all these different things do so much more than that. But that's what, inspired me. So
that's great. That sounds like a lot. And how did you get involved with the distribution part of float tanks? Yeah.
So I shopped around, as everyone does when they're first starting a center, looked at all sorts of different manufacturers. I've floated in almost every style of pod. Well, I know I've floated in every style, but most of the manufacturers I've experienced, which is great. And then I ended up landing on Float Spa. I loved, all float tanks and rooms and cabins, whatever style it is, have great sanitation, but with Float Spa, there was a marketing level that just really attracted me to it, as well as a few different benefits. So most of our float tanks are made out of fiberglass, but these are made out of an antibacterial and antimicrobial acrylic. So there's no porous surface for anything to live. So it allows you to maintain your water your solution a little bit easier. And they completely drain and fill between each customer, guaranteeing 100% of the water's been filtered. As well as, standard, they come with a sand filter, a cartridge filter, like a paper 5-micron filter, UV light, and then your choice of, what you're using, whether it's chlorine, bromine, or hydrogen peroxide. So, it's multifaceted and also fit pool codes. And even though in South Carolina, we aren't regulated, which is great, I wanted to make sure that whatever I did, if I wasn't grandfathered in, that I was set up already under whatever pool regulations they'd implement.
Nice. I love.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I got sucked into the benefits of Float Spa because I just love the pods. But the way I got involved was over the years, dealing with different issues that come up, coming to float conferences, getting to hang out with Robert and Andros, who unfortunately recently passed away, I just developed a really good friendship and kind of begged them for years, to be honest, to let me do this. And they're just good people and good people to work with, and had created a really great system that I could stand behind. So they offered the position to me, and I was excited to accept it.
And Robert and Andras, they're the owners of Float Spa? Or
So Andros is really the guy who created everything. He was the engineering mind behind it and owner of it. I believe now that has been passed on to his family. But Robert is still heading it up, and manufacturing's continuing and all of that. But that was definitely a very sad thing to have happen.
Sure.
So,
yeah, sorry to hear that. As far as the equipment goes, is the filtration system something that could be added to another tank? Is that and do you sell that? Is that how it works? Or you have to buy the complete system? How does that work?
Currently it's not separated because it's all patented together. But I can certainly find out if they'd ever be open to changing that and going that direction, because what they've built really is very smart, but there is a lot of, connections with the pod itself back into that system that all work together. In order to, maintain heat properly. There's a option to add aromatherapy in. There's options for the lights and music and all sorts of things. So it's got a lot of really cool components.
Yeah, hold on.
Yeah.
We're definitely I know where Kim's going already. I saw her light up and I thought, same thing. Aromatherapy?
Yeah. Right, yeah.
So,
how do you do that?
So basically, in the filtration area and in all the mechanical area, there is a little foam piece that is encapsulated where you can easily access it. And then just add a couple drops of whatever aroma, essential oil that your client chooses or you choose. And it will intermittently throughout the float just kind of disperse a little bit through water.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool. So it's a nice little way to
in the air or in the water?
No, in the air, not in the solution.
Does it make a little?
No, there's no sound to it. They definitely thought that out.
That's fascinating.
No, there's no
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the ones in the fancy bathrooms that shoot off at a fancy hotel every once in a while.
It's nothing like that. You don't have Febreze flying at your face during a float. So.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And then, there's little foam cartridges basically that you can remove, put a new one in, clean that one, and then.
And it's pretty quick to air out?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's not, it's not something where, it's not an environment where you want to overwhelm the senses with anything, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So some people, like myself, I'm just a purist. I want no lights. I want no music. I want no nothing. And but it gives the option to kind of have that integrated, and it seems to be calibrated to just the right amount where, because your senses are already heightened, it's not overwhelming at all.
Yeah, it's such an interesting concept. And, I've been working with someone on something to introduce aromatherapy during the float. And, that's one of those, it's a back burner project because, another hat that I want to put on.
Yeah.
But we've had folks who've said, they've called ahead of time to see if we actually have any kind of essential oils or anything being used in our center because they're allergic to specific things. And so that would be, my only concern. If somebody's allergic to eucalyptus, then, I obviously wouldn't want to use eucalyptus in their suite. So if it's one of those where it's just a little minimal amount and that, know that it's getting cleared out before the next guest, that, would be ideal. So, but it's I think that's the only ones I've ever heard of that do that, right?
Yeah. As far as I've ever heard too. That's pretty rad.
It's a cool add-on, and I really haven't leveraged it much with my current business, or with my current center. I'll offer it to people who've done it a few times, but first off the bat, I don't necessarily want everybody like having a bunch of decisions to make, because they're already a little bit nervous or like overly excited about floating like I was my first float. So
yeah, definitely. And because we want them to kind of have that full experience of noticing when you come out, all of a sudden you can smell things that you didn't smell before, and you know, all of that sort of stuff.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Can I just add that I think with this whole COVID, and I'm convinced I've had some smell issues since I was vaccinated. Like, I have people who say they smell stuff. I'll smell stuff. I'll ask other people. They don't smell things. And I think there's a lot of like messed up smells these days. So I've actually, that's the type of thing, if they could figure out how to sell that to fit other
I wonder
tanks,
if
I
that
think
could
would be
be
huge.
Because I know from friends who have had COVID and had the smell issues and had to use essential oils to kind of like stimulate and like bring it back. I wonder if within the float environment that could be extra beneficial. It seems like it would be.
Interesting. Yeah. Something to think about.
Is that something, Kelly, that you charge extra for, or how does that add-on service kind of work?
Yeah, well, like I said, I haven't really leveraged it hugely in my center because I have so much going on.
You do.
Right.
So,
and it might be what, like a $5-10 markup?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like if you're charging $60 for another service, you know, right?
Yeah.
You're spending your time doing other things.
Yeah, or maybe, like it. One thing I've done is like for Valentine's specials, when we'll come out with like a cool body wrap with chocolate raspberry fondue mud or whatever we're doing, plus a float with like those same scents integrated, where you have this kind of like, very well constructed kind of meal of a spa day, where all those flavors kind of carry over. So, something like that, you can kind of integrate that into the special price and just kind of amplify, what you're doing and what they're getting.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It is.
And I do want to say, I don't know if we had addressed this, but you are here as a partnership with the Float Conference, and you will be having a booth at the Float Conference, which will be in Portland, Maine. Don't fly to Portland, Oregon. Portland, Maine. So people who... Yeah, double check that. So you'll have a booth there, and people can talk to you and ask you more about this at the Float Conference at the end of August, August 26th to 28th. Is that right, Kim?
You got it.
I remembered
Super
that.
proud.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we just launched virtual tickets too. And so we'll even have a special place where you can get in touch with all of our sponsors there and be able to, if you can't make it, you'll still have access to chat with the sponsors. So if you have questions for Kelly, of course, you can use our platform to be able to reach out to her there too. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be there.
How many float conferences have you been to, Kelly?
I think this is my 4th.
Yeah.
Maybe my 5th. But I know during COVID, I wasn't able to come. And then there was a year or two there where, it just didn't make sense for me to leave my business at the time, whether we were in a hiring and training phase or, something.
Yeah. I'm curious about that because you mentioned earlier, having grown your business to the point where you can step back and, do some other things. Like, what was it for you that made that difference? Like, how did you get there? Because most of us do start working at our centers 24/7, except Gloria, which Gloria and Dylan, we love you guys. We miss you tonight. Wish you could have been here, but we're going to have fun without you. Yeah. But how did that transition go for you, Kelly?
Definitely the first year and a half, 2 years, I was living there a lot. So, over time, I think, one of the things is I've always had a focus on making sure that anyone who works with me feels very well taken care of, and like I'm trying to do everything I can to make sure that, basically I don't underpay my employees. You can only afford to do so much. But I also try to find opportunities for growth for them, encouraging them in whatever career path they want to go down. And so my current manager, I think that was a big changing point when I was able to get to a level where I could pay a manager a proper salary and have them take over some of my duties and be responsible for filling in when people call out, where I'm not, strung out and all that.
Tell me more about that. That's been my dream.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't call me. Call me.
Yeah, and I mean, still things happen, and I try not to overwork anybody, so I'll step in if somebody calls out and certainly help with that. But I put policies into place around vacation and unpaid time off. And if you're sick, you must go to the doctor at this point, because I had some stubborn employees too who just wouldn't go to the doctor and extend that for a really long time. So I think policies took it a far way, but also just finding the right people who are passionate about caring for people and helping people, and then giving them the benefits that make them happy and allow them to enjoy their lives in work and outside of work. So now I take one shift a week. I work, until the afternoon on Tuesdays, and otherwise I'm, doing other things for us outside, which as you know, there's plenty to do.
Yes. Yeah.
And Kelly, you said you now have a therapist at your place?
Yeah. We have a mental health therapist, licensed counselor. And, one thing I pride my spa on is probably similar to you guys, is having little known therapies and tools that are extremely effective and not readily available anywhere else. Kind of massage outstanding, but I do have some pretty incredible massage therapists who are, have integrated a lot of skills. So I look for that in every area to offer the most benefit. And so the mental health therapist, I actually went to high school with her. She was a couple years ahead of me. And she found and got trained in, it's called the complete resource model. And it kind of integrates like all these different Eastern philosophies. It's got breath work. It's got visualizations. I can kind of tell that it's, bouncing off some chakra stuff. So it's kind of woo-woo integrated with traditional mental health counseling. But it seems to be proven and really effective for PTSD in particular.
And is that something that integrates the other services, or is it its own separate service? And if people want to do other services, they will, or is there an actual method to like, hey, do this service, do that service, and then we'll talk, or
right.
Just separate things?
So typically it's separate, but my therapist, we did go to high school together. Her name is Vanessa. But we didn't really, we had some crossover and we were friendly with each other, but we never hung out. So she approached me about doing it because she was so taken with the Lucia light and with floating, and saw how those integrated so well as beneficial when you're healing from trauma. So she'll definitely recommend that to her clients, and say, if we're doing one session a week, maybe try and get one Lucia light or one float a week or once a month, or kind of talk to them about what their budgeting options are as well. So,
right.
I love that. I feel like that's one of the opportunities that we've really missed, because there's actually a counselor in our building, literally right above us. And we just haven't had an opportunity to make those connections. And, and I think part of it is because that's kind of a part-time thing for her. But I think just having those two paired together, or in your case, like 6 plus, all of that paired together can be such a really powerful, truly a place of healing for people. And as soon as you started talking about the therapist, and we've talked about that stuff before, it's just such a really awesome service to be able to provide to your community, and how beautifully it does pair with all of those other services. And I think that's the thing is, whenever we're growing our centers, to look for things that aren't just nice to have or easy to implement, but that you can really integrate into a strategy for people.
Absolutely.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Drew, you looked like you were about to say something.
I was just thinking about how amazing it is when people come out of a float, and even before they might say, I'm going through these things, and then they float, and then how good people feel after a float. And I can only imagine, that's all I can do because I'm not going through it, but I can only imagine if someone who was struggling with something floated and then felt the way that they felt, and then talked to somebody about it, because they're not as stressed, not as tense, not as, wound up from the world, right? You're able to kind of let go and say, you know what, this is how I feel. And it can kind of, I don't know, I just feel like when people come out of a float and have these kind of epiphanies about their own emotions and stuff that they're going through, that's where I often talk about being a bartender, kind of, because we're kind of therapists behind the desk for people who float. And I don't know, imagine a world where they just walked right into someone's office who was a professional, knew what they were doing. And I only imagine what kind of benefit they could have. So I would definitely love to hear, maybe that's something you can keep an eye on, Kelly, is trying to track a couple customers who do see the benefit of that or integrate into that, and what kind of progress they make, right? People are really struggling who come into float, and that's one of the biggest things that I think keeps my employees. I struggle with employees, but the ones that I get stick around because they see these things, these whoa moments. And I think it's wonderful with all the services. I wish I had space for more services. I'm a little bit jealous of everyone who can add a bunch of stuff. And I think it would be great to have somebody there. So hopefully, and I'm sending you good vibes, boom, good vibes to you, for people to benefit from that. And, I think it's potentially the future to have something like that integrated into your center,
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. I would love to track stuff like that. I used to do a PTSD program where I'd just give, 10 free floats, and in exchange, you fill out these forms before and after everyone. And
interesting.
You can let me use your name or not. And so we tracked a lot of different things. I worked with a friend who's a PhD in stress physiology. So she kind of helped me put all that together. And it was really interesting, both in how many floats actually people ended up doing. I think there's maybe a little bit more benefit if they do pay something where they're kind of investing in it for themselves as well. But the people who completed it haven't stopped coming. So some of them turned into ambassadors, and some are just members. And yeah, so I think the matchup with the counseling would be fascinating to track.
Like the wheels are spinning.
So many ideas.
What can I do? Yeah. I am curious though. I want to kind of take it back a minute. you were talking before about how invested your employees are really, and to be able to kind of support them in their career goals and things too. And, if you've listened to the show for a while, you've gotten to experience some of Drew's like ups and downs with employees. And we've just grown our team significantly and like scaled back. I'm at the center, once a month. Most months now, like that's kind of where we are. I was like you, like I was there weekly, all day on Sundays. That was my shift. And I've just recently scaled back so that I'm there about once a month. My husband is now down to 2 to 3 days a week. And like, it's all this life-changing stuff, but I'm curious, whenever you're looking for employees, and what is it that you're looking for, for someone who is a good fit for you? Because I think that's something that really as an industry we struggle with, is like trying to find that sweet spot, because we obviously can't afford to pay a ton. And compensation is, one piece of it, but really what are you looking for in that personality fit for your team members?
Yeah, I look for heart-centered people, for people who are already in touch with some of their own consciousness, I guess, and interested in consciousness exploration. And people who are just like, I don't mean this to be offensive to anybody with OCD, but just like a touch OCD, because cleanliness is everything. Yes. Especially in our space. So very detail-oriented people. And then, I don't know, there's like an X factor where it's just like the right people find you and you just kind of know. And I used to give people a float before I hired them, just like, come try it out if they hadn't already. You don't have to love it in order to work here, but it certainly would help. And also would love to know if you feel like it's a good fit for you, because if you hate what we're doing, it's not going to be an enjoyable job.
Right.
So that's an approach I've had as well for people I interview and really like. Sometimes that's the next stage I'll take them to. But yeah, I think every time, like, I just got out of a hiring and training phase, and every time it's like, when you jump on it, I've been doing virtual interviews, and it's like, when you jump on that Zoom meeting or Indeed meeting or whatever, it's just this like, we're connected, you get it, and this is right for you kind of thing. So
yeah,
I wish I could put quantity.
Will you?
I agree.
You by hiring?
Sure.
I'm going to send people to you. You bring people in.
It's so funny you say that, Kelly, because like a lot of times, people ask me like, what do you look for, in hiring team members? And really, like, I'm intuitive, and like not in the like this kind of intuitive, but like my gut just tells me the second I meet somebody whether or not we're going to be a good fit. And that's how I've been hiring folks. And, knock on wood, we've been really fortunate that like I can meet someone and immediately be like, ooh, nope, that's not it. And it's not physical appearance. It's not judgment, but like, it really is a lot of energy. And I love like the way that you describe it though, that it's heart centered. One thing that I've really started kind of diving into is the highly sensitive person. It's a book that I read, and if you're familiar with HSPs, like HSPs, it's kind of that OCD factor without it being a clinical diagnosis. HSPs are, the word that they use in the book is conscientious. You are very aware of your surroundings. You notice everything that's happening. And for HSPs, that's why like floating is such a magical experience, because it takes away all the things that you're like, the world is so loud and chaotic. And, that's one of the reasons I float, is just to kind of calm everything that I see and everything I'm aware of. And, we just promoted one of our employees, to a senior position. And, she is definitely a highly sensitive person. She's very aware of what's happening, not just in the space, but with people. And she's kind of checking in. She knows like how people are feeling about things. And it's kind of that like sixth sense that you're just aware of everything going on around you. And I think that's one of those things that there's actually some quizzing that's out there for HSPs, like where do you fall on the scale? And it's really funny because my husband and I took it, and I was like super high on the scale. I think I had one question that I didn't answer yes to, and he had one question that he did answer yes to. And, you know, so we kind of balance each other.
I have a theory. Does it bother you to hear people chew?
Yes. Misophonia. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Sounds.
I have a theory that anybody who's kind of in that category is like it extends to that. Like I'm pretty sure if you have an issue hearing people chew or smack or crinkle.
Yes. There you go, Drew. That's your new interview question.
Do you crinkle things? Do you like to crinkle? I'm dying.
Yeah.
Everyone's got pet peeves.
Yeah. But it's really interesting. Like, and sounds really bother me. I hate white noise. Like, they're just, you know, so many of those little things. But I think it just goes to like everything feels overwhelming, you know. So
yeah.
But yeah, I'm curious, have you ever asked anybody that in an interview? Like,
I've never asked anybody that. That just came to me, but it makes sense.
Yeah,
because I have a hard time with that. And I'm
going to ask my team
that anybody who's highly sensitive would also, because my mom is that way. I don't think I mentioned this. My mom is my business partner at my spa. And she also cannot, especially if she's stressed or like tired. And it's the same for me. I don't know if it's a learned behavior for me, but, I think I'm more sensitive than not. And, like in the movie theater, if somebody's crinkling their popcorn behind her, she'll do the like,
interesting.
Signaling that they're being too loud with that.
I feel really called out right now.
Yeah.
Because I just went to the movies for the first time in, a couple of years. And as I was sitting there, like the person beside me was just constantly making noises. And like, it's a really big, like one of those like plush kind of theaters. And as we're sitting there and I could hear him breathing, I could hear everything. And then the person behind me took off their shoes. And so I could smell their feet.
Oh, no.
And it was just like,
lost all sense of decency with COVID.
Right?
That's what that tells me.
Totally.
What's wrong with people? My goodness. If you got stinky feet, you can't take off your shoes in the movie theater.
I'm surprised I let people take off their shoes whenever they come into the float center. Like, that's one of our requirements up front. And I think it's only because there's enough distance.
You can tell when some people know they have stinky feet. They're like, my shoe, you want me to take them off? Yeah. You can't go in there with them. Okay.
It's funny because I don't think I've ever noticed that, but I'm going to have to watch for those folks to see how they respond to that question.
And then kind of go back to the area and take a whiff. Usually they stink.
Oh my goodness. That's a really fun theory. I'm going to have to definitely check with my team and see if that's one of the questions that we should implement in the hiring process. So
yeah, there you go.
I love it. So this has been so much fun, Kelly, just to see like all the different hats that you wear. Is there anything else that, you want to share with people, either about Float Spa, about Drift, about being a float center owner, about the consulting work you do, anything at all? Yeah.
Well, on all this employee stuff, I do consulting for hiring, for employee manuals, for training, all of that. So if that is something you need, Drew, hit me up.
In my head, I was just thinking, this was a joke, but maybe there's something there that could help me out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm in need. It's summertime. I know I could hire help. I want to hire help. And in my head, I'm like, I'll just shut down what I don't want to work this summer. And then I'm also like, wow, I could put the effort in to hire and continue to make money and employ people. And I keep going back and forth with like, I'm just being lazy and not wanting to deal with things. So I'm like, I'll just shut down. Like that's,
Oh God.
5 years in, I'm like, I'll close. Like, all right. I know that's not the answer, but I'm delaying what I should be doing and probably reaching out to someone like you and asking for help.
Yeah, well, I'd be more than happy to.
Yeah. And, Drew, like, find that balance, if you can get some good folks in there, it really does. It's amazing. Like, we just expanded to 7 days a week. And that was a big shift. And it's one that like our team is actually kind of struggling with because we had all of this pent up demand in about 5 days. And now that it's spread over 7 days, we actually opened up like 49 additional spots. And all of a sudden our days don't feel full. But like we feel like we're dead, and we've all had this like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Are we going to survive? And like we're actually beating our numbers from last year. Our sales are up, like everything is up, which is to be expected. But we're all like chilling, like totally. And so
Side
that
note,
means like I need to step up marketing. But
yeah, but also I personally I offer what I can work, and that's what I offer. But I'd rather be open more and have more availability with less full, right? I'd rather be 80% full, and there's always somebody who wants to book, or I'd rather do that. And so maybe we will be talking, Kelly. And
Yeah.
also, I know we already mentioned it, but people can find you and say hello to you. We were talking a little bit before we started recording, and you are very friendly and very approachable. So people
Thanks.
can stop by and say hello at the Float conference. And where can they reach you otherwise? How would they reach out to you?
So, driftgreenville.com, DRIFT Greenville.com is my spa's site. There is a page on there for Start a Float Center where you can see all the different consulting services we offer, as well as schedule a free 30-minute consultation with me. And I can get quotes or whatever you need. Or you can just come float with us and enjoy it, and we'll be happy to have you. So you can hit me up that way. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook at Drift Greenville. I'm still working on a website for our distribution and consulting stuff. So right now it's living on my spa's site for now. So, and real quick, I want to give a shout out to Kim. One of the things that I took off my plate after 4 years of doing all my own branding, all my own marketing, all my own social media posts, I hired Kim and her company to do my social media, and it's been awesome. So
thank you.
if you need a social media consultant,
that wasn't planned.
no, it wasn't. But it's just, when you run a business day in and day out and you take something off your plate and it alleviates your mind. I didn't realize how much that was constantly in the back of my head. And so it's been personally and business-wise a great decision. So
Thank you.
Isn't it funny how I was just messaging with someone who lives in Europe about where you struggle to find value to pay someone to do something, and you think, oh, that's whatever it costs. You think, I'll just do it myself and save the money. But it becomes the cost versus what it takes out of your time, your energy, your mind, your soul, your right? There's all these other things that it's hard to put a value on how much time you would spend doing something. And you hear a number for whatever it costs, and you say, oh, I'll just do it myself, on top of all these other things you're doing yourself. And sometimes there's a addition by subtraction. You're paying someone to do that, but it frees up your time and energy and thoughts and decision making and all these things we get burnt out on.
Yeah.
It's better off to pay somebody to do it and
so true.
At least try it. But there's this, I see this in talking with other float center owners where they struggle to let go of something, pay somebody else to do it, and give it a try. Spend a couple months worth of the money and try it out and see the benefit of it. And it's amazing when you finally take that step. You said, after 4 years, you handed it off, and you're at a spot where you feel comfortable to do that. And it's been beneficial for you to do other things as you're growing and expanding, right?
Well, and to be fair, the consulting that I wanted to see for that hadn't been created yet. So then it got to a point where there was somebody I saw working for other people that I trusted, and seeing, what you'd already done, Kim, that put a lot of confidence in me to do that. But it's the same thing with starting a float center. Like, people have these hurdles about, I'm spending so much money on construction and float tanks and all these things, and then they're like, and I'm supposed to hire a consultant. And yes, like, whether it's me or it's someone else in the industry, it's too hard of an environment to tackle all by yourself. So, like, get ahead of the game. That's what I did.
Agreed.
And I agree also, for anyone out there who's listening, I hired Dylan as a consultant back in the day, 5-6 years ago. And as I look into new things that I'm interested in and potentially pursuing as a business, I have no problem spending a couple $100 to hire someone as a consultant to answer questions. And people kind of struggle with that. And it's like, no, it is so worth it to just get the answers from somebody and not have to spend your time digging. And in something like floating, it's kind of tough to find the answers out there on the internet. You're really going to get more by paying someone and asking those questions. And it's not too easy to go, you can go work at a restaurant and then end up, you can go through all the things and go open your own restaurant, but it's hard to do that. Not everyone has access to a float center that you can go and learn the ropes. So it is very much worth it. So anyone out there who does not currently own a float center or is maybe thinking of adding a float tank, trust me, very worth it to just pay somebody and ask the questions and get the information, and you'll get more information than you probably expected to get, because what you don't know is what you don't know. And there's a lot of it in the float world, right?
Yeah,
it's true.
Absolutely.
It's true. And I think that we see that every day. Looking at centers that are thriving are typically the ones who have been able to, kind of disperse some of that workload and to look to other people for expertise. DIY is kind of in our blood to some degree for I would say the majority of us, but it is finding those things, like you said, Kelly, of like, what can I offload to somebody else who loves doing it, because that's going to show up in their work, but also that where you can take your time and talents and put that, all of that energy into something else where you can grow and thrive, as a result of that. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at actually hiring somebody to help on some of my marketing stuff, not the social, not the organic social, because that's mine. I love it. But, I'm looking at hiring somebody to help on some of my other stuff. And I don't think any of us are in a position where we can just say, you know what, I can do it all. You might be, hurting yourself if you're doing that. So it takes a village, and we've got an awesome
and you got to
village.
have time to float.
Yes.
So.
Yes. I'm going to go schedule my float. Like,
practice
as soon as you finish. Yeah. You got it. Yeah. Awesome.
Kelly, before we wrap up, what type of software do you use for your system? You have a lot of stuff going on.
Oh, I use Helm.
Just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Oh, as I was asking the question, I thought, please don't say something else. We all use Float Helm. Float Helm is an awesome.
It's the best.
I guess not Float Helm. It's Helm now, because they can do a lot of services. And just wanted to shout out Helm. So you have a whole bunch of services. You use Helm, and you do okay with it? You enjoy it?
I love it. I mean, there's been issues from time to time, but that's true of any web-based software. Overall, it's been a dream to work with. The guys at Float Tank Solutions and Float On, all the people up there on their whole team, really just phenomenal. And it's clear that they float because everything's so well thought out on both sides, both the customer side and the back side for us. I use the logbook religiously. I use it a lot for project management and task management for my own stuff too. So, I pretty much have no issue, and I love it. I mean, I'll make suggestions for how to improve it, but because
Which
there's
they're
always
responsive
things.
to, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, very
totally.
responsive. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll ask a question and get an answer back within minutes. It's crazy. So
I'm often shocked how I'll send a message on it. I've literally sent messages on like Saturday night or Sunday morning, and I'm like, you don't have to get back to me. I know it's the weekend, and they're getting back to me. I'm like, you're 3 hours behind me. I think it's 3 a.m. I don't know what you guys are doing, but chill out. You don't have to respond so quick.
I'm like, is it the staff at Float On? Because they're like 24. I don't know if they're still 24/6, but they were 24 hours a day. So I'm like, are they just chilling while?
No,
people
they're
are
just
floating
awesome.
for
I
3
think they're
hours?
working from home.
I think they're
that's
all in
amazing.
float
Awesome
tanks.
people.
Like they're all floating, and then they hear a little ding come in, and they like read it, and they're like, you know, it's all voice to
They've
text.
got Google Glass on in there.
Oh my gosh,
see that.
you guys! I have to tell you, I chatted while we were talking about the whole question about whether or not it drives you crazy to hear people chewing. I chatted one of my team members who's at the center closing up right now, and she said, yes, it does. And she's a rock star. So I think you're onto something, Kelly.
Yeah. New interview question.
New interview. It should be a new interview question.
Yeah.
I guess that when in that environment, it totally bothers me too. Like if it's quiet and you're making those sounds, like shut up, right? Like be quiet.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Kelly, this has been so much fun having you on and just hearing all the different things that you do and getting to, learn a little bit from you and be inspired from, by what you're doing too. And thank you for everything that you do for the industry too. I know you're also pretty involved in, helping folks out. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for having me on. I can't wait to see you in person at the Float Conference. And hopefully everybody's comfortable with hugs. Because I will gladly hug.
There will be lots of hugs. Yes.
Lots of hugs.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank y'all.
And as always, ask your employees if they can handle hearing people chew.
New interview question.
Good night.